Hey there, YouTubers. So in this video, we're going to benchmark the i3-9350KF. And in some aspects, this is, going to kind of show you some things that might drag it down. One, we have put in mix match RAM in here. So instead of having the same exact model of RAM across all four slots, we have at least two different brands. Now it looks like three different brands. And on top of that, one of those is 2133 and the other 2666, so it's dragging it down there. Now, I'm going to run the benchmark here, and we may actually overclock this. I don't know. We'll see. I don't remember my voltage settings that I use for this, so I'll have to think about it. We might have to Google it. I haven't used this processor in forever. It's one of my least favorite processors that end in K. So we're going to do this one, Cinebench R20, and then we'll also do userbenchmark.coms. So this is on a ASRock Z390 Pro 4 motherboard. I've got a massive Noctua cooler on it, which is, overkill for this CPU. I usually use it on my i9, but all right. So there you go, 58 degrees Celsius, highest CPU temp. And this is one of those things that will drive the temp up pretty good, especially if we overclock it and run this benchmark. So 1331 marks. All right, let's close that for now. Let's open up Cinebench. And I expect this to do just dreadful in here. So it looks like this has some of my CPUs on here. i5-10400 now, i7-10700. Looks like this can take a while, folks. It's definitely a huge difference between this and a 10th gen i7 or the Ryzen 9 3900X that I have. And not that it matters for this, but we do have it's EVGA GTX 1660 installed. So we're getting there, folks. Slowly but surely. Now, to do this video, I'm using a super cheap $20 capture card. I couldn't tell you the brand name. It's got a USB 3.0 connector plugged into another computer, but I believe it to be USB 2.0. So, alright, there's the score, 1619. And let's go ahead and do this one. Now, what I like about the user benchmark is this can almost tell you if something's not running very good. But there are also those times where it doesn't do you any good because it doesn't really recognize the drive you're using or the graphics card or whatever. Usually not the graphics card, but most of the time it's a drive, which brings the score down, but does give you some useful information, things that you might not notice otherwise. Might realize your RAM is running at 2133 instead of 2666. Obviously this motherboard, you can have overclocked RAM on it, but the moment I do not have that with me, so we're using this stuff. Okay, so there's our score. A lot of background CPU usage, so this is not really useful. You get an idea, though, that this is a decent gaming rig. We'll get that out of it. Now, for whatever reason, our CPU is performing below expectations. Decent single core score makes this, decent for a lot of different types of gaming. But the rest of the scores are not that great. The graphics card scores. I think a RTX 2060 is, maybe it's a 2060 Super is 100%, so this is way below that, which is kind of surprising, where this falls in the grand scheme of graphics cards. And so it did recognize our drive as well as a hard drive. I did not realize was installed, but it's another story. So there's that, and you can see how this is not the best RAM, obviously. Latency is kind of high. The score is not too great. But, overall, you can game on this, no doubt. So let's just do a basic overclock. And I'm pretty sure this thing can handle at least 4.9. Now, what this is missing out on is the voltage aspect of it. So we have 1331 marks to beat, and I don't know. There's not really any difference here except for we see more. So we'll run that. So we should see a higher CPU temperature. We should see a higher maximum processor frequency. And we also should see a higher score. I would expect the temp will hit 60 Celsius this time. I would expect that the max processor frequency will hit 4.9 gigahertz, possibly. No. Oh. So you see here we've got a current EDP limit, so that's going to hold us back. A lot of times you'll hit these if you have if you have a bad CPU cooler, you'll hit this early. And then power limit throttling. Usually there's different ways to get rid of that one, but I don't think we're going to have that problem here. So one thing I didn't check to see if power limits were set to unlimited. Wow, so it was actually worse, right? Worse benchmark score, but everything else is higher. We didn't actually get to 60, so we're just slightly under 4.9. Go figure. Alright, so we do have, I failed to note this earlier, power limits are set to unlimited. Now this is where we would actually improve this score. And you shouldn't blindly just go do this like I'm doing it, but it's going to be somewhere over here. I'll run this again. So you see how nice and cool that is? That's what a good CPU cooler will do for you. Alright, so 1259. We did get a little hotter. So that was better than the previous. Let's try this guy. See if we can beat 1619 over here. All right, wow, huge increase. I'm kind of curious if this can handle. I couldn't find a good setting online, but this is not the smartest thing in the world to do here, folks, but we'll see if this can handle it. Just for you guys. I unfortunately didn't write down the scores that I got before. Alright, so let's run this. If it blacks out, then you know it couldn't handle it. So far so good. This is usually where it'll fail if it's gonna not take. And obviously you should run a stress test as well, but we are getting some issues with performance here. $12.09, so that's actually worse, right? It's one of the worst scores yet. And our CPU got hotter, but this is worse. So now, what is the problem here? Most likely, I don't see for this motherboard the ability to put a extra 1x4 CPU power connector on it. And that may be, you know, some of the issues. Now, of course, why not refer to Intel? There we go. Processor core ICC max is set too low. Yeah, so here's your 3 reasons why we could be hitting that. And the bad thing is they don't give you any info on how to correct ICC max, if I can even find it. Here it is. You know, so this is one of those things where you'd have to play with it. That's probably not going to make any difference, right? So you have to play with these things cautiously. And boom, it already hit it. So it's not really going to do much for us. Alright, 1213. So you see this went up a little. Now does that tell you we're doing the right thing here? Can only assume yes. Let's run it again. And that one was worse. So I'm not making any progress here, folks. But now if we do this one, there's no doubt we're scoring higher. We need it. All right, so 1842. It doesn't show the old one. Interesting. Now, let's run CPU user benchmark. Last one, folks, last one. And voila. A lot of very high CPU usage. Part of it could be these other programs running in the background. This shot way up. So this most likely is much better for Fortnite now. And nothing else. Actually, the RAM scores were. So there you go, folks. Just, doodling around a little bit with the i3-9350KF. I would recommend you spend more time fine-tuning your values here. These are some that I pulled off the internet, but due to other issues we were not able to solve, unfortunately. And without, a little better guidance, you might not want to mess with these things. So now, is this a cheap motherboard? Yes, it is. And that's just the way that goes. So the voltage regulator is set too low. But I'm going to try and change that. Now, at this point, most of you probably, could call it a day on this. Because it's not going to, the BIOS isn't going to show up on the other computer. So thanks for checking out the video. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.